On the first day I was excavating, I remember, I had this trowel. We were at this ancient Roman bath complex, and I had my trowel and I flipped over a clod of dirt, and bang, right there was a bronze coin. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So right at that point, I was sold. And right when I got home, I said, I'm going to get a master's degree in ancient Roman archaeology.
This is Life's Tough, Explorers Are Tougher. And I'm your host, Richard Wiese. Scratch the surface of an explorer and you'll find an adventure and a great story. This show is about their tales. This podcast is a proud supporter of the Explorers Club and the EC50 Initiative, 50 people changing the world that the world needs to know about. For more information, go to explorers.org. I'm not sure how many of you saw the movie The Catcher Was a Spy. Paul Rudd was in it. It was set back in the 1930s and 40s. There was a catcher for the Boston Red Sox named Moe Berg. And on the surface, he was just your average backup catcher, hitting in the 240s. But what made Moe Berg legendary wasn't what he did on the field, is what he did off of it. He was fluent in several languages. He was a physicist. He allegedly carried a gun under his catcher's gear, and during World War II became a spy for the OSS, which later became the CIA. Okay, so now Moe Berg may have been a spy, very cool, but he was not an all-star, and he never won a World Series ring. Our next guest checks both of those boxes. Brad Lidge is a former Major League all-star and world champion, perhaps best known for slamming the door shut in 2008 the postseason with the Phillies. But these days, he's traded his pitcher's glove for a pickaxe. He's now an archaeologist working at an ancient Etruscan site in Italy. Pretty random, right? Deciphering symbols, uncovering ruins, and proving that life after baseball can still be full of adventure with just a little more dirt. Welcome to the show, Brad Lidge. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Richard. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm excited for this. And I have to say, I'm definitely not a physicist, and I'm definitely not, doing the CIA thing, but that sounds pretty cool. I am happy just to have some kind of second career, though. So I appreciate the introduction.
So did you see that movie, The Catcher Was a Spy?
You know what? I did not. But now that you're saying it, I certainly remember it. And obviously now I've got to check it out. I mean, Paul Rudd, that's already, pretty good company. So I will definitely check it out. I definitely have my list of top baseball movies. Bull Durham being at the very top, I have to say, but now I need to check that one out as well.
Well, I hope you don't relate to the pitcher Nuke in there. It seems like you seem to be a little more of a thoughtful guy than Nuke.
But more of the Crash Davis, the catcher Kevin Costner version than Nuke LaLoosh.
Maybe you've got to have seen it. I didn't have you on here just to talk about movies, but I am sure you have seen the Indiana Jones films.
Oh, man. I have to say, as an archaeologist, and if we're all honest with ourselves, every archaeologist will tell you that at some point they did watch the Indiana Jones movies, and at some point they were inspired by them, whether it was in their childhood or young adult years, whatever. If they don't say that and they try and get into this, deal, well, he was stealing things. Okay, sure, yes, it wasn't exactly archaeology per se, and it's certainly not legal to do what he did, but you have to say that the adventure aspect of it, the exploration, where he went, dealing with Nazis, all that crazy stuff, it was certainly inspiring. And for me, yeah, Richard, I'll tell you, I remember specifically, watching those movies with my parents growing up, and I was pretty young, and they were some of like the first, gruesome movies that I watched where you saw faces melting and all that stuff. And yeah, I was definitely inspired.
Well, you were at the Explorers Club fairly recently, and there was a flag on the wall there that I believe I told you that was carried by a guy named Roy Chapman Andrews. And so Roy Chapman Andrews, who was the real-life inspiration for Indiana Jones, he smuggled dinosaur eggs out of Mongolia, or shipwrecked in Indonesia. And so there was a guy, and when Harrison Ford came to the Explorers Club and saw that flag, he had known that his character actually had been modeled after this real life person.
Yeah, that's nuts. I'll tell you what, I actually do remember that. And you're darn right. I got a picture next to it as well. Again, you think back a little bit. I mean, that's one of the great things about the Explorers Club is how far back it goes. And you can kind of see the documentary aspect of, some of those early pioneers, those early explorers. what archaeology was about, even though, okay, dinosaur eggs, maybe a little bit more paleontology, but still the same idea, the element of risk and danger back in those days where you have no idea what you're getting into. You certainly didn't have Google Maps at that point. So, it must have been quite a massive adventure every time those guys went on an expedition.
Just one more sort of aspect of your visit to the Explorers Club. You also went to a big black tie dinner with 1,200 people, a lot of explorers there. And I'm not sure if you knew, but there were some Secret Service people there because we had some members of the current administration's cabinet at the event. But when the Secret Service was doing kind of a sweep of the area, I was talking to the guy, and these are guys that are not impressed by that much because, they see presidents, they see senators. So this guy goes, "Hey, I just think I saw this guy, Brad Lidge." He goes, "I hate that guy." And he goes, "I'm a Mets fan. He ruined more games for me." So, I guess for people who aren't baseball fans, that's actually a backhanded compliment, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll take that every time. I mean, we obviously play in a lot of visiting stadiums, and Mets fans are pretty diehard. So that's great. I would expect nothing less from a Mets fan than to be not super happy with me. We were at a run when I was with the Phillies that we played pretty good against the Mets. So I get it. And I will appreciate the backhanded compliment for sure.
Our mission is to empower the next generation of explorers. If you like this podcast, please recommend it to a friend and have them join the expedition. So let's take a little journey back. How did this whole idea of archaeology or science or exploration sort of, you had to have been on, if you're a major league player, the track is you played Little League, identified as a really good player, probably did a ton of travel teams. And so you probably didn't have much time for a lot of other things. So where did you grow up, and kind of who influenced you into wanting to know more about things other than baseball?
Well, great question. I mean, first of all, I grew up in Colorado, just south of Denver, and, played Little League baseball and all the sports growing up. And I was raised in a family that I think both my parents were very inquisitive people by nature. We had a lot of good, I would say, in-depth conversations about the world at large. But I'll tell you, not until I got to high school did I have my first great world history teacher. And I remember at that point, he really brought things to life. He would talk about ancient Rome and everything else. And I really started loving this idea of maybe, potentially doing something in history. But I was in high school. I didn't really know too much. And then all of a sudden I got really good at baseball. I didn't even start pitching until I was a senior in high school. So it wasn't really on my radar at all. And then all of a sudden I started pitching because I wasn't even going to make the team. I wasn't even going to make the varsity team. I hate to say it was like an embarrassing, the fortuitous little secret here. I wasn't great at baseball until I started pitching. I played outfield, and then finally they got me on the mound and things started clicking. So fortunately, I had done well as a student, and Notre Dame had watched me pitch. And right away, when I started pitching, I was able to throw the ball hard, basically. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I could throw it hard. And scouts saw that, and they were like, well, he just started pitching. It's projectable. He has a fresh arm. He's probably going to throw harder. So, it just happened that one day I was throwing, and Notre Dame came and watched. And so I ended up playing there. But this whole time in my mind, all this baseball stuff was happening so fast. It was moving so fast. I got to Notre Dame, got drafted in the first round by the Houston Astros coming out of there. But always in the back of my mind, I had this love for history, ancient religions, world religions, everything. It was always super fascinating for me. Even at Notre Dame, I took a lot of theological classes. And at some point in my career, I started, I remember in Houston being on road trips, and I would pop in, back then, DVDs of ancient Egypt or ancient Rome, and kind of learning about it. We had so much downtime on the road, and I just really had a lot of fun thinking about, the ancient world. I don't know why. I mean, most of my teammates were like, "Why did you waste your time doing that? Let's go get lunch." I'd go get lunch with them, and I'd come right back before we went to the field and watch more. And I knew somewhere along the line, maybe toward the end of my career, that okay, baseball doesn't last forever. And I was fortunate to play for 11 different seasons in the major leagues. But as I was getting toward the end of that, see, when you get drafted out of college, you get drafted the year you turn 21. That's the year you're eligible. And so for me, that's when I was a junior. So I hadn't even finished my bachelor's degree, but because the baseball season takes up so much time. And by this point, I had my family and everything else toward the end of my career. But always in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I really wanted to finish a bachelor's degree. So I went back as soon as I retired. And even during the last season or two of my career, I was taking classes to finish my degree. And I finished my bachelor's degree right when I retired in 2013. And then I immediately knew that, okay, I love this. I love learning about world history, but I don't want to sit at a desk and just read about it. I want to go participate. I want to go into the field. And there was finally this chance. We had our summers back as a family for the first time in, I don't know, since I was a kid. So I was like, let me volunteer. Let's go to Italy. I would love to be a part of an excavation. My wife generously said, okay, let's take the kids and see what happens. So we did. The Italian culture is so they embrace the young kids. They're so welcoming. And I had such a great time. It was an ancient Roman site. On the first day I was excavating, I remember, I had this trowel. We were at this ancient Roman bath complex. And I had my trowel and I flipped over a clod of dirt and bang, right there was a bronze coin. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So right at that point I was sold. And right when I got home, I said, I'm going to get a master's degree in ancient Roman archaeology. And my wife's like, all right, so I guess we'll go down that path now. And in any event, I've been there every single summer since then. I've gone over as a volunteer, obviously at the beginning of all this, 2013 through 16, got my master's degree in ancient Mediterranean archaeology. And then the last 3 or 4 years, 4 years now, I've been more fully embraced in these ancient Etruscan sites, pre-Roman, but also sites that cover the full gamut, like Bronze Age all the way through Iron Age, Etruscan, Roman, medieval, Dark Ages, you name it. So anyway, I guess that's a really long-winded way of answering your question, but things started off very much not in this path. And then at some point it evolved to, I don't just want to learn about this. I want to stay physically active and go excavate. And the first opportunity I got, I would encourage everybody to go on an excavation, whether it's, in America, in Italy, wherever. I mean, and whether you're looking for dinosaur bones or ancient Roman ruins, whatever the case, being in the field is for me, there's only a couple things in life where I just lose track of time entirely. I can be fly fishing and be out on a river and not even pay attention and 4 hours has gone by. The only other time I feel that way is when I'm excavating and we're, looking for things. It's one of those deals where you're so focused and you're so in the moment that you don't even realize how much time is passing. You don't even realize that it's 105 degrees outside and it's the middle of summer. It just brings a great deal of joy for me to be able to participate in those.
That's an amazing story. And, I guess the cliche is that when a guy retires from baseball, he has a car dealership or a restaurant or, something else, or, they get arrested for something. But, is there any analogy? Is there anything within baseball or that training of athleticism that sort of seeped over into what you do now?
Good question. I do think there probably is an element of kind of focus and dedication, where if you're able to kind of keep that determination and focus, I mean, we dedicate our lives in baseball every single day, 9, 10 hours a day, 11 hours a day, whatever it is, to perfecting our craft in baseball. And I think that feeling of trying to perfect your craft, even though in archaeology, that's not really a tangible thing, for me, it carried over into archaeology and a determination to, a lot of people are going to say as a former athlete, I have no business getting a master's degree and, being a supervisor at 2 sites now, that's not something that was really on the radar, but I kind of wanted to prove that theory incorrect as well. So there was a little part of me, I have to say, when people were like, oh, you're not going to really stick to this. You're not going to be surely you're going to do something else. There was a part of me that was like, no, I'm doing this and I'll show you that this can be done. And, Richard, at some point, I'm also very much, kind of in the formation stages right now of looking at a PhD and figuring out what that looks like, a doctoral program. It's all part of kind of that drive, I think, not just to prove people wrong. Of course, I loved playing baseball and I love doing archaeology. I would do it for no other reason than simply that. But there is a little bit of that element that I think happens as an athlete too, where you're trying to prove something. And by the way, you're spot on. I have so many friends that retired and either, stayed in baseball as an announcer, as a coach, as a scout, or went into the restaurant business, which inevitably fail, or owned a car dealership. And those are maybe more like 50-50. But it is definitely off the beaten path to do something in kind of in the world of academia.
Which former teammates do you talk the most to about your archaeology? I mean, you have deep relations from spending that many years. And so who kind of gets what you do?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So I have a former teammate, Billy Wagner, who just got elected to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, and he'll be enshrined in Cooperstown at the end of this month in July, and I'll be going up there to be his guest. I'll tell you right now, I mean, he has stayed in baseball. He is a coach. And he'll ask me, of course, about what I'm doing, and I'll start talking about it, and you can see the attention drifting elsewhere. And he's like, anyway, back to baseball. So there are some teammates that they're just, laser focused, and they always will be. But there's a lot of guys and former Phillies teammates for sure. Everybody, especially guys like Jason Worth, who himself actually owns horses now, and he's had several. I mean, his horse last year won the Preakness. So, and he's been doing really well in that business. So guys have a lot of different interests. Mostly they stay athletic. But that being said, some guys are very interested and want to know more. Some guys will ask me about stuff. Other guys will ask because they're kind of curious. And then once I start explaining it, their eyes, roll to the back of their head and they kind of change.
Yeah, but that's life in general. I mean, we all had college people. I mean, some people are interested in your life. Some people aren't. And I guess it's that whole aspect of curiosity. So if you could take any one of your former teammates or a player that you played with into the field, who would you enjoy showing an archaeological dig the most to?
I think one thing that I have realized, especially, kind of being a supervisor over the last handful of years, is that you really need some good personalities in the trench. You need people that can lighten the mood, that are having a good time. And, it can get a little monotonous from time to time. Ryan Madsen was a former bullpen guy. He was like my setup guy when I was with the Phillies. And the dude is he's hilarious. I mean, there's nothing he says or does that isn't some kind of element of lightening the mood. So I think that somebody like a Ryan Madsen would be great to have. I dare say he probably doesn't have a ton of interest in it, but if he did, he'd be awesome to have in the trenches with everybody else, because he'd be bouncing around, a little bit of, attention deficit type thing where he would be talking to everybody and whatever, but he would be a great guy to have in there.
I've been on tons of expeditions myself. And what I think sometimes people don't understand, that on any expedition, there's a lot of downtime. And you talk about life, you talk about family, you talk about a lot of things, but ultimately you want somebody who's easy on the nerves, can sort of see irony in things, kind of can understand, that it's boring, it's raining, it's snow, whatever that is. So you really want somebody who's just fun to hang out with.
I mean, no question. I mean, look, everybody, as you just said, everybody that's been on an expedition or an excavation, they know the value of good personalities. They know the value of having good people around them. And, it is certainly an element where, a lot of times, like for example, when we're out in Merlot, just south of Siena, one of the sites that I do, we'll get 40 volunteer students from UMass Amherst. We'll get tons of other doctorates coming in and out, studying different things at our site. The ones that you kind of stay together with and talk to more often are the ones that kind of can step back and have a little bit bigger picture of what's going on and can enjoy themselves and enjoy a meal and, kind of have fun with a lot of the aspects. Of course, there's a time to be serious, to be a serious academic and to look at, statistics and data and really dig down into all that, of course. And, that can be fun in itself if you're doing a project that you're really pouring your heart into. But you need, as you said, there is a lot of downtime and you need people that can keep it light and it can keep it fun. And I try my best to do it out there too with the students. And I'm like, ask me any questions, we'll be out at sites and we'll have breaks every once in a while. And the students will ask me to throw rocks and, hey, can you hit this tree, way in the distance or whatever. So I'll do stuff like that. But, you got to keep it fun and light. And it is a much more enjoyable experience when you can.
Well, you're also in Italy. I have to imagine that, and again, I've been on expeditions where you open a can of anything and you're just, like sharing potato chips or whatever it is. Yeah. But I have to imagine, I've been on archaeological digs in Cyprus, and I just remember the food being off the charts, that sitting around with the team afterwards, talking about whatever you were doing that day, but with really great food. That's got to be a benefit of that.
Oh, it is for sure. I mean, it's Italy. I'll be honest, at the site, we're scrambling for lunch and, we're getting what we're getting, sandwiches most of the time, which is great. But it's really at night when you're kind of worn out from the day, and you go to a great Italian restaurant, and you just, it makes everything worth it because you just feel so rejuvenated after a great Italian meal. And I think there's I haven't excavated. I did an excavation in England one time. I can tell you the food there not as good, but but the weather was fantastic during the summer. I'll tell you that. But there's something about Italy, and even just being there and being in the culture of everything, and the heat. Yeah, it's there, but it's just like after a couple of weeks, you really kind of get in the rhythm of everything. And then all of a sudden you come back to America and it just doesn't feel quite the same. So there's something that's very kind of subtle, but it kind of takes over after a couple of weeks when you're in Italy, where you're really just kind of, ingrained with the cycles of the days of the summer, the weather, the food. And if you can get to a small town and do an excavation, all the better.
Brad, so, in sports, athletes always have in their mind, like Jesse Owens to win the Olympic gold medal, right? That's is probably the high point in his life. Spent the rest of his life attending paid lunches where he spoke about winning the gold medal in Berlin. You were able to close, a World Series. What do you think would be the penultimate for what you're doing now? Will you ever have that moment to where, because you're not going to have 50 or 60,000 people cheering, right? You're not going to walk out on the street and people,
that would be odd,
wanting a piece of you. What would be now? And maybe you're able to, justify in your head that there's a difference. But what do you think is going to be that moment that you go, wow, this is beyond?
I would hope that somewhere along the line that something that I'm partaking in makes a difference in terms of an ancient culture, in terms of an understanding of a particular site. Because you're right, there's not like you can't throw a pitch to win a World Series per se in archaeology. But you can, be someone who helps solve pieces of a puzzle and brings light to an entire site, or helps understand, for something that I've been studying, these sigla, or these symbols that are ancient Etruscan that we don't really know what they mean, and you find them in different contexts and kind of funerary tomb complexes of the Etruscans, and sometimes in workshops, and they communicate a message, but there's spirals and there's stars and there's all kinds of different shapes, but we don't really know what they mean. So being able to contribute, I guess, to the academic understanding at large. I mean, you can write papers, and we've published a little bit on these sigla and these symbols. That feels meaningful. I will tell you one aspect that I really appreciate is that, sometimes we'll be at a dinner or wherever, somebody will ask what I do. And I tell them, I'm an archaeologist. I'm working at this site over here. And they are so grateful. I mean, that is one element that feels great when you're out there, is that they, this, especially in Tuscany, the people there they're really, really, they value their ancient, history and their ancient heritage and their ancestry so much. And so for somebody like myself taking time to go over there and do this excavation and helping, shed light on it so that they can understand more, it's so meaningful to them. So that for me is a huge aspect of it. So I guess, that's meaningful, helping understand more about a particular site or the Etruscan sigla is meaningful. And I think, maybe bringing more people to the site, maybe getting more people out there and helping them understand the world and the process of archaeology, and helping people maybe change their mindset toward, I've always had this job, but I don't necessarily love it. Is there a way I can transition into something that I do love? And if those elements kind of fall in line and those dominoes fall, then I'll feel very rewarded for what we're doing. It won't be as simple to see, it won't be just in one pitch in one moment, but over time, I think we'll hopefully I'll be able to kind of see the rewards in that.
It's interesting, and I hope I'm not divulging a secret conversation you and I had, but, invariably when people get together and they do similar things or have interests, they talk about it. But both of you, I think that both of us have this secret ambition of finding Viking ruins here in America, because I feel that whoever finds that, definitive proof that Vikings were here before Columbus, I think that rewrites American history, and that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it really would. So you're right. Like there's a separate kind of a little bit under the radar interest I certainly have, and And, in the Explorers Club, what's great is there's several guys as well, archaeologists that have done great work, and shout out to Mike Arbuthnot, toward, trying to understand a little bit more, potential Viking settlements in America. We have Lansdowne Meadows, of course, in Canada and Southeast Canada, where we know there was a Viking settlement, but that was the year 1000 and 1452 when Columbus sails the ocean blue. Like we're talking about a 500-year gap here. And the settlement that the Vikings had was rather large, and they were making a lot they were doing a lot of metallurgy, and they were trying to create a community. So we know that there is more, but trying to find it is very, very difficult. And I think that the study of that is very compelling for people as well. So yeah, when we talk about Columbus, I mean, that's not a thing, right? I mean, because we know that the Vikings were there prior to that. Yes, I definitely have an interest in that. There are some very interesting structures in the Northeast that might reveal information regarding that. And, they need more study. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is kind of some one-off type projects is partner with some great archaeologists and some universities to kind of take a look at, potential excavations around these sites to see what we can learn. I mean, no one, should be going in there trying to have this biased look of like, we are going to find Viking artifacts. The archaeology speaks for itself. It's a science. We have to be professional about it, but there are certainly compelling features and structures that deserve a second look. And so, I hope to be able to, in the not too distant future, take a bigger look at one.
Maybe we'll go together. Brad, one last question. So you mentioned that you became good in baseball your senior year. So let's just take a year back from that. Maybe you're a 15, 16-year-old. If you were talking to 15 or 16-year-old Brad Lidge, what would you tell him about life, and what would your advice be?
Oh, man. I would probably have a lot of things to say, but I think probably one of the first and foremost things would be, stay on your path. Like, you have no idea what's in front of you. And I think that it's really something that, as a 15 or 16-year-old, you really don't know. I'll say this, Richard. So my daughter's 20 years old. My son's 16. They are so concerned, and there's like this odd pressure of like, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to major in? What are you going to do as soon as you graduate? And yes, the universities manufacture this pressure, but also just culture and society does in general. And what I would say is like, look, you have no idea where this world is going to take you. You have no idea what you're going to do. At 15, 16, I enjoyed playing baseball, but that never would have been on my radar to play in the major leagues, let alone even like in college or even being on the varsity team in high school. So I think you just have to kind of go through life and figure out what your interests are. I mean, I said this before, the world needs people who love what they do. And if you're passionate about something, follow that because you'll be great at it. But if you're kind of forced into some kind of uncomfortable, major or job when you're young, maybe take a step back and think about, is this really what you want to do? And, I would offer that maybe advice, not just to myself, but anybody in that situation. I know I'm offering it to my kids as well, to figure out what they're passionate about and then go into that with everything they've got.
Great message. Brad, thank you so much for, really sharing such an unusual journey with us. I can't wait to see what the next 10 or 20 years has in store for you. So thank you for
Richard.
being a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. And I appreciate all the great work you're doing as well. And looking forward to talking to you again soon.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast. Now we have a little favor to ask. We'd really appreciate your support. So make sure to leave us a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss another episode. See you out on the trail.